The brutal realities of Viking weddings. A dark tale uncovered a Viking bride's wedding night was marked by such brutality that some women chose death over marriage. What awaits you in this story may shatter everything you think you know about Viking romance. From blood-soaked rituals that left brides scarred for life to public humiliation ceremonies that broke their spirits, and the terrifying bedroom traditions that modern historians often refuse to discuss, this wasn't about love. It was about survival. Prepare to discover the 5 most disturbing wedding night practices that Viking women endured, illuminating why many lived in absolute terror of their own marriage day. If you're intrigued by the dark secrets that history attempts to erase, hit subscribe now. There's a new forbidden tale here every day. Pre-wedding rituals. The symbolic end of maidenhood before any vows were exchanged or mead consumed. The bride-to-be underwent a series of rituals designed to signify the symbolic end of her life as a young, unmarried woman. This was not merely a change in status. It was a public and psychological transition. The process often began in a bathhouse, where she was accompanied by her mother, married friends, and female relatives. Here, she was ritually cleansed, a process that symbolized washing away her maidenhood. This bath was more than just a spa day, it was a moment of mentorship. Experienced women would instruct the bride on new duties, how to manage a household, uphold religious observances, and navigate her role under the authority of her new husband. Perhaps the most powerful part of this pre-wedding ritual was the removal of her maiden symbols. A young unmarried woman traditionally wore a crane, a special gilt circlet in her hair, signaling her virginity. During the bathhouse ritual, this circlet was ceremonially removed and often packed away to be kept until she could one day have a daughter of her own. In its place, she would don the heavy bridal crown of her new family, symbolizing not only her own status but also the lineage she was now expected to continue. This transition wasn't merely about changing accessories. It was a public declaration that the girl she once was had been replaced by a wife. The marriage contract, uniting families and wealth while the bride was being prepared for her new life. The business side of her marriage was being finalized, as marriage among Vikings was first and foremost a business contract. Most Vikings in the landholding classes viewed marriage as a strategic move designed to build alliances, consolidate wealth, and secure political bonds. The entire affair was called the Bruko, which translates to bride ale or wedding feast, focusing on legal negotiations rather than romantic sentiments. Negotiations were handled not by the couple but between the groom's family and the bride's father or male guardian. These conversations revolved around 2 key financial transactions. The first was the murder or bride price. This was not a purchase in the traditional sense, but a sum of money or goods paid by the groom's family to the bride's family. This payment compensated for the loss of her labor and transferred the responsibility of her protection to her husband. The second transaction was the dowry or hymenophilia, which represented the bride's share of her inheritance from her own family. This was designed to help establish the new household. Once the finances were settled, the deal was sealed. So what of the bride's consent? While some laws didn't strictly require it, many sagas are filled with stories of disastrous marriages stemming from a woman's will being ignored. In many cases, a father would consult his daughter, yet the social pressure to accept a strategic match beneficial to the family would have been immense. Imagine knowing that your entire future was being decided in a room you were in based on a contract that treated you as a pawn in a family alliance. The wedding, a daunting ritual of legal and divine obligation with the contract settled. The wedding day arrived, typically on a Friday, a day sacred to Frigg, the goddess of marriage. The ceremony was a public spectacle steeped in the weight of law and divine will. Before the religious portion of the ceremony could commence, the bride price and dowry had to be formally exchanged in front of witnesses. Often this was followed by a blot or ritual sacrifice. Animals associated with fertility gods like a goat for Thor or a boar for Freyr would be killed. A priest or guti would use a bundle of fir twigs to sprinkle the blood onto the couple, binding them in the eyes of the gods. The exchanging of ancestral swords came next. The groom would present his sword to the bride, intended to be kept for their future sons. while her family would give him a sword from her ancestors symbolized that her protection was now his responsibility. Rings were then exchanged, sometimes offered on the hilts of these newly gifted swords. Finally, in a potent symbol of what was expected of her, a representation of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was placed in the bride's lap. This was a direct prayer for fertility and strong children, invoking the power of the thunder god, a not-so-subtle reminder of the physical duties expected of her that very night. The consummation, the final step in marriage legitimization. After the ceremony and the celebratory feast came the part of the wedding that sealed the union legally. The consummation. In Viking society, a marriage wasn't considered valid until it had been physically consummated. Interestingly, this private moment was made surprisingly public to eliminate disputes over legitimacy later on. As the night came to an end, the bride and groom were led in a procession to the bridal bed, escorted by at least 6 witnesses, usually family members and respected friends. These witnesses' role was to ensure the couple entered the bedchamber together, preventing any future disputes regarding the legitimacy of their union or the inheritance of their children. While many online sources might get this aspect wrong, it's highly unlikely that witnesses stayed in the room for the act itself. Their job was merely to confirm that the couple was in the chamber together and that the final aspect of the contract was being fulfilled. For a young woman who had just undergone days of intense rituals and experienced considerable stress, this final public act would have induced considerable anxiety. It was not about intimacy, but rather fulfilling a cold legal requirement, an act that was witnessed to validate the contract and eliminate any potential future disputes. The morning gift and keys, power and responsibility. But the wedding night didn't end in silence. Rather, it concluded with a transaction that could define the rest of a woman's life, the morning gift. After consummation, the groom was expected to grant his wife property or wealth, a sum of silver, livestock, or rights to a field. On paper, this was meant to provide her security. In practice, it tied her fate to the fortunes of the household from the very first dawn of her marriage. With this gift came the keys. Across Viking graves and artifacts, married women are often illustrated with keys at their waist, heavy, visible, impossible to ignore. Receiving those keys wasn't a quaint gesture, but rather a public handover of responsibility. From that day forward, she controlled the stores, chests, and locks. However, along with this power came accountability. Mismanaged provisions or any hint of dishonesty could stain not just her reputation, but also her family's alliances. Imagine the pressure of that morning. You awake after a legally witnessed consummation, sit up to find a gift that can outlive your husband, and feel the weight of iron keys pressed into your palm. Power? Yes. Protection? Sometimes. But it was also a message that your world has been locked into a single doorway, and you are now its gatekeeper. Conclusion: the daunting nature of Viking marriages. So, why was a Viking marriage ceremony such a daunting affair? Because it represented the public and ritualistic transformation of a woman's legal and social standing. First, her maiden identity was symbolically washed away through rites of passage that prepared her for a new life. Second, she was a key figure in what was essentially a strategic contract, her future negotiated for the benefit of her family and clan. Third, the ceremony itself was an intimidating spectacle of divine and legal pressure, with rituals constantly reinforcing her duties to produce heirs. Finally, her wedding night concluded with a publicly witnessed escort to the bedchamber, a legally required performance to validate a contract she had little say in. The real history of the Vikings is filled with complex and surprising truths, challenging everything we think we know. If you find these hidden histories as captivating as we do, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Let us know in the comments which of these intense rituals you find most surprising, and join us as we continue to unearth the fascinating yet often unsettling aspects of our past. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to support our work. Never miss an upload. Like this vid, drop a comment and share it with others to help us grow this historical community.